You think your desires are yours. The watch you want, the neighborhood you dream about, the car that makes your pulse move when it passes you on the street. The life you are building toward the version of yourself that feels like it would finally be enough. What if none of that came from you? What if every desire you believe is personal was placed there deliberately, expensively, years before you felt it by people whose wealth depends on you never asking that question? This is how they did it. Please subscribe and activate the button to help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can bring you more relevant content and so YouTube can notify you when we publish new videos. In 1929, a group of women marched down Fifth Avenue in New York City smoking cigarettes. They called them Torches of Freedom. The press covered it. The images spread, and within months, cigarette sales to women doubled. It was not a spontaneous act of liberation. It was a paid operation designed, orchestrated, and executed by a man named Edward Bernays, who had been hired by the American Tobacco Company to crack a market they could not reach through conventional advertising. Bernays did not sell cigarettes. He attached cigarettes to something women already wanted desperately and were being denied: independence, defiance, the right to take up space in public in ways that had always been reserved for men. He did not change the product, he changed what the product meant, and in doing so, he doubled the market overnight. That operation, that specific, cynical, structurally elegant conversion of a genuine human need into a commercial transaction is the foundation of every desire management system that the elite have deployed in the century since. Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew. He read his uncle's work on the unconscious and asked a question that Freud never asked. Not, how do we understand the irrational mind? But, how do we use it? The answer he developed changed everything. The irrational mind, the part of you that responds to images before logic, to stories before data, to identity before price, that mind is not a bug in human cognition. It is the primary operating system. The rational, deliberate, analytically rigorous part of your mind that you believe is making your decisions is, in most cases, a narrator, explaining, after the fact, choices that were already made by something deeper. Bernays understood this in 1928. He wrote a book about it. He called it Propaganda, and the people who read it most carefully were not academics or journalists or concerned citizens. They were the people who had something to sell. Now here is the part that most analysis of consumer psychology never reaches clearly enough to be genuinely useful. The techniques Bernays pioneered were not simply adopted by advertisers. They were absorbed into the structural operation of the entire system through which the elite maintained their position, not as a marketing strategy applied to individual products, as a comprehensive architecture for the management of what the population wants, values, and believes is worth pursuing. Because here is the problem with power at the highest level. You cannot maintain it through force indefinitely. Force is expensive. Force generates resistance. Force requires the continuous expenditure of resources to sustain the compliance of people who are not, fundamentally, choosing to comply. But desire is different. If you can arrange for people to want exactly what the system needs them to aspire toward the markers of success that the system defines, to compete for the positions the system offers, to measure their own worth by the standards the system has established, then you do not need force at all. The compliance is voluntary. The competition is enthusiastic. The hierarchy maintains itself. That is not a conspiracy theory. It is the operational logic of every durable social order that has ever existed. The specific version of it that the modern elite have built is simply the most sophisticated, the most resourced, and the most effectively disguised iteration in history. And it starts with a single mechanism so simple that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. They did not take control of what you own. They took control of what you wanted. Everything else, the wealth concentration, the political influence, the cultural dominance, flows from that single, foundational capture. But here is what they did not anticipate. The mechanism only works on people who do not know it exists. And you are about to know it exists. Let's start with scarcity. Because this is where the manipulation becomes most visible and most ruthless. In 2021, Hermès announced the discontinuation of the Birkin 25 in a specific shade of blue. Within 48 hours, secondary market prices for existing pieces jumped 30%. No new bag was made. No additional craftsmanship was added. The bag did not become more beautiful. The leather did not improve. The hardware did not change. The announcement made it worth more. Not because of supply and demand in the economic textbook sense, because of the narrative, because the discontinuation converted every existing piece from a luxury object into a piece of a story, the story of the last ones, the story of the people who had one before it disappeared. And stories attached to objects create a premium that no manufacturing specification can justify or replicate. This is engineered scarcity, and it is running everywhere, all the time, on almost everything the elite produce. Now watch how deep it goes. Hermès does not simply restrict supply, it restricts access through a process that converts the purchase itself into a test. To receive an allocation of a Birkin bag, the actual object, you must first demonstrate your relationship with the brand through prior purchases, scarves, belts, home objects, a documented history of spending that proves you belong in the category of people Hermès is willing to serve at its highest level. The purchase history is not a financial requirement, it is a psychological one. It tells you, without a word being spoken, you must earn the right to spend your own money here. And here is the devastating genius of that mechanism. People do it, willingly, enthusiastically. They build the history, they make the purchases, they nurture the relationship with the specific sales associate who has the power to eventually place their name on the right list. They invest years of attention and thousands of dollars in the pursuit of a bag that costs more than some people earn in a year, and they experience that investment not as manipulation but as achievement. Because the system converted the barrier into a credential. You did not overcome an artificial obstacle, you demonstrated merit. You were not filtered by a commercial strategy, you were recognized by an institution of genuine taste. That reframe from obstacle to credential is the most important single move in the entire architecture of desire management. It converts the system's gatekeeping into the customer's accomplishment. It makes the person who jumped the highest hurdle the most enthusiastic defender of the hurdle's existence. But this is only the surface of how scarcity works as a control mechanism. Go deeper. The scarcity of objects is visible, legible, documented in waiting lists and auction results and secondary market prices that financial media covers with genuine interest. But the more powerful scarcity, the one that actually structures the elite's dominance, is the scarcity of access. Not access to bags, access to rooms. The dinner where the actual decisions get made. The gathering where the people who shape the direction of industries and markets and governments exist in a context without cameras, without formal agendas, without the constraints that public visibility places on what can be said and decided. Those rooms are scarce in a way that no amount of money can directly address. You cannot buy your way in. The price of entry is not financial. It is relational. It is the specific, accumulated, tested credibility that comes from being genuinely known, over years, by people who are already inside as someone whose presence in the room adds value, and whose discretion can be trusted completely. That scarcity is designed to be impenetrable by new money. And it is. The tech billionaire with $20 billion and 5 years of wealth discovers, at some point, that there is a room he has not been invited to, a conversation he is not part of, a level of access that his net worth does not unlock, and the discovery is not comfortable, because the room he cannot access is not a party. It is where the decisions that affect his $20 billion are made before they become visible to the market. The scarcity of that access is the most powerful lever in the entire system. And the people inside the room are not letting you in until they have decided on their own timeline, through their own process, that your presence serves their interests. Your desire to be there is irrelevant. Your desperation to be there is useful. Now here is the moment that changes how you see everything. Not the scarcity, not the access management, something older and more fundamental. The story. In 1987, Patek Philippe ran an advertisement that had nothing to do with watches. The image was of a father and a son. The copy read, "You never actually own a Patek Philippe, you merely look after it for the next generation." Read that again. They told you in a paid advertisement, for a commercial product, that you do not own it, that the transaction you are about to make does not transfer possession in any meaningful sense, that what you are acquiring is not the object but the responsibility of the object, the obligation to preserve it for someone who does not yet exist. And sales increased, because the advertisement was not selling a watch, it was offering an identity. a specific, detailed, emotionally precise vision of a kind of person, a person of sufficient substance, sufficient depth, sufficient connection to something that extends beyond their own life, for whom this kind of responsibility is appropriate. You buy the watch. You become the person. That mechanism, the conversion of commercial transactions into identity acquisition, is the most powerful engine of desire manipulation ever developed. And once you see it operating in Patek Philippe's advertisement, you see it everywhere. The Rolex worn by the first man to stand on Everest. Sir Edmund Hillary, 1953. The image existed, the association was real. But Rolex did not simply document a historical moment. They built an entire architecture of meaning around it, the watch that went where human beings had never gone, that survived conditions that nothing was supposed to survive, and attached that architecture permanently to every Rolex produced before and after. You buy the watch in 2024. The association with 1953 comes with it, the conquest comes with it, the proof of human endurance at the absolute limit comes with it. That is not advertising. That is identity manufacturing at industrial scale. Now watch what happens when the story meets social media. The luxury brands that thrived in the last decade did not thrive because they made better products. They thrived because they understood that the story could now be distributed at zero marginal cost to billions of people simultaneously. That every person who posted their Birkin, their Rolex, their Ferrari, their private club membership, every person who voluntarily inserted a brand's signal into their personal narrative was doing the brand's identity manufacturing work for free. Better than free. Authentically. Because a person's genuine emotional connection to an object, the real pride, the real joy, the real feeling of arrival that the purchase produced is more persuasive than any advertisement the brand could produce at any budget. It carries the credibility of actual human experience. It reaches networks that paid media cannot access, and it costs the brand nothing. The customer became the content. The desire became the distribution. And here is the shock that most people are not ready for. The brands knew this would happen, not in 2010 when Instagram launched. Before that, the entire architecture of the luxury desire system the identity offers, the credential systems, the narrative investments was designed from the beginning to produce exactly this outcome. People who feel so genuinely, personally, authentically connected to the brand that they carry its message into every social context they inhabit. The Hermès customer who defends the waiting list at a dinner party is not being paid. The Rolex wearer who corrects someone's misidentification of their reference is not an employee. The Ferrari owner who tells the story of how they finally earned their allocation is not a spokesperson. They are all doing unpaid marketing work, with genuine passion. For brands that spent decades engineering exactly that passion in exactly that person, the desire is real. The engineering of the desire is also real. Both things are true simultaneously. That is what makes the system so difficult to see clearly and so difficult to exit once you are inside it. You are not being deceived. You genuinely feel what you feel. You were simply helped to feel it by people who had a very specific reason to want you to. But here is what none of this covers. The scarcity, the stories, the identity engineering, all of that is the part of the system that faces outward, toward consumers, toward the market, toward you. What comes next is the part that faces inward, toward power. And it is considerably more consequential than anything we have covered so far. The desire management system is not primarily a commercial operation. It never was. The commercial operation, the billions generated by luxury goods, the extraordinary margins, the brand valuations that dwarf the physical assets of the companies carrying them, that is the output, the visible, measurable, publicly documented output of a system whose primary function is something that does not appear in any financial statement. The primary function is the production of authority. Specifically, the production of a cultural consensus about who deserves to be listened to, trusted, and given decision-making power over things that affect everyone. Watch how this works in concrete terms. Two candidates walk into a room for a meeting with a senior partner at a private equity firm. Both have comparable academic credentials. Both have relevant experience. Both are articulate and prepared. One carries a Patek Philippe, wears a suit cut by a tailor whose name is known to the partner, mentions in passing a club whose membership the partner shares, uses the specific vocabulary, not financial jargon, something subtler, The specific aesthetic grammar of a life constructed at the right level that signals to the partner, this person has been inside this world before. The other does not. The partner does not consciously decide to favor the first candidate. He does not run a deliberate calculation. He experiences something more ambient than a decision, a comfort, a recognition, the specific, involuntary ease of being with someone who reads as belonging to the same category. That ease is the output of decades of desire management. The luxury system installed in the partner, a set of evaluative signals, a map of what competence and belonging and trustworthiness look like that reliably favors people who have had access to the right environments for long enough to absorb the right markers, and then it made access to those environments expensive, time-consuming, and restricted enough that the people who have it are, overwhelmingly, people whose families already had it. The system is not selecting for competence, it is selected for legibility. And the criteria for legibility were written by the people who already passed the test. Now extend this beyond the meeting room. The regulatory official who grew up attending the right schools, who summers in the right places, who belongs to the right clubs is not corrupt. He is not receiving envelopes. He is simply a person whose entire social world is populated by people whose interests align with a specific configuration of the industries he regulates, whose dinner party conversations have given him a picture of those industries that is colored by the perspective of the people who built them, whose genuine, sincere assessment of what is good policy has been shaped, over decades, by proximity to the people who benefit from that assessment. The influence does not require a transaction. It requires proximity, and proximity is manufactured through exactly the desire management system we have been describing. The club that the official and the executive both belong to did not recruit them together for any explicit purpose. It recruited them because they both passed a set of admission criteria that selected for a specific kind of social background, a specific kind of cultivation, a specific kind of relationship to the luxury markers that the system has established as meaningful. The shared membership produces shared context. The shared context produces shared understanding. The shared understanding produces, without any coordination, aligned behavior. No conspiracy, just culture. Culture that was built, refined, maintained, and expanded by the people who benefit from its specific configuration of values. The luxury watch on the wrist of the man in the meeting is not just a signal, it is a credential, a proof of passage through the cultural filtering system that determines who is considered safe enough, legible enough, insider enough to be trusted with power. And the person who designed the filtering system decided what the credential would look like. They also decided who would find it easiest to acquire. Here is what they decided. The credential would require money, but not just money. It would require time, cultural formation, proximity to the right people during the years when taste is being built, access to the environments where the specific aesthetic grammar of the elite is absorbed, not taught, the kind of exposure that you can buy, but only if you also have access to the context that teaches you what to buy and why. New money can purchase the markers. It cannot easily purchase fluency. And fluency is what the system selects for. There is a moment when it arrives differently for different people, at different points in the trajectory of their relationship with this system, when the mechanism becomes visible, not gradually, suddenly. Like a figure hidden in a pattern that, once seen, cannot be unseen. For some people it happens in a store, standing in front of an object they have wanted for a long time, finally in a position to acquire it, and noticing in the specific texture of what they feel in that moment that the desire is not quite what they expected, that it is pointed slightly in the wrong direction, not toward the object itself, toward what having the object will communicate, toward the version of themselves that other people will see when they see the object, toward the feeling, not of pleasure, but of arrival, of finally being the person who has the thing. And in noticing that, in recognizing that what they want is the signal, not the object, they see the whole system for the first time. For others it happens in a room, a gathering they worked for years to access, finally present, finally inside, and discovering that the room is not what it was presented as being, that the conversation is not at the level they were promised, that the people are human in ways the mythology surrounding them did not predict, and that the access itself, the thing they sacrificed significant pieces of their life to acquire, does not feel like the arrival they were assured it would feel like. It feels like the beginning of the next level of the same pursuit, because that is what it is. The system does not have an end. The hierarchy does not have a ceiling that, once reached, releases you from the logic of ascending it. Every level of arrival contains the clear visibility of the next level. Every credential earned reveals the existence of a further credential. The scarcity is inexhaustible by design. The aspiration is structurally renewable. And the person who understands this, who sees the architecture clearly enough to recognize that they are running on a track that has no finish line, has a choice that the person who has not seen it does not have. They can keep running, many do. With full awareness of the mechanism, they continue participating, because the participation produces real things, real access, real resources, real influence that serve genuine interests. The system is manipulative. It is also functional. These are not mutually exclusive. You can see the construction of the desire and still experience the desire. You can understand the engineering and still feel what the engineering produces. What changes is the relationship to the desire. The person who has seen the mechanism is no longer owned by the aspiration. They are making a choice about whether to pursue it, on their own terms, for their own reasons. The anxiety that attaches itself to the markers, the specific, uncomfortable, low-grade urgency of feeling like you are always one acquisition away from the level that will finally be enough. That anxiety requires not seeing the system clearly to maintain its full power. See it clearly, and the anxiety weakens. Not to zero. The conditioning is deep, and the culture that maintains it is everywhere. The weakening is real, but it is not total. What it produces is space. The specific cognitive and emotional space between the desire and the response to the desire that makes genuine choice possible. The pause in which you can ask, is this what I actually want, or is this what I was designed to want? That pause is not available to the person who does not know the design exists. It is fully available to the person who does. The elite built the most sophisticated desire management system in history. They built it across centuries with extraordinary resources, and they have maintained it with a consistency that no other cultural institution has matched. It works. It works on almost everyone, almost all the time, in ways that are genuinely difficult to fully resist. But it was built for people who do not know it is there. You now know it is there. The system is still running. The signals are still transmitting. The hierarchy is still sorting. The desire is still being produced, distributed, and monetized at industrial scale. Nothing about the system changes because you have seen it. Only you change. And that is the one thing the system was never designed to survive. Not resistance, not rejection, not rebellion. Just a person who sees it clearly, asking themselves, for the first time, what they actually want. Luxury power exists for one reason only: to reveal what the elite pay to hide. Subscribe to Luxury Power and hit the bell now. Every week a new secret is uncovered. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing our global audience. Everything you saw here is based on real cases, verified contracts, and documented facts. We don't glorify wealth, we dissect it. Do you still think money buys freedom? Tell us in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to see the truth. And remember, even the most expensive life can be a gilded cage. See you in the next video.